All right, just a quick introduction before we get into this interview with Rod. We did have a bit of a bad connection. We were recording using Zoom on Rod's end, so it will cut out at points. I'm going to put some subtitles up so that you can kind of read through it as you want. And it does get better kind of in the middle and bits at the end. So definitely don't stop watching because he is a fascinating person with some great stories. And with that, we'll get to the show. I'm Milo Denison.
And I'm Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up. And tonight we have got with us Rod Matsui, and we're talking about all things to do with SFX.
Probably more than SFX, I'm thinking.
Well, I'm sure you've got like plenty of like fantastic stories looking at some of the stuff you've worked on, from what's considered the best Batman movie of all time, I'm sure. For one.
Well, that's of course that's a matter of opinion, but yeah, I think what we're trying to get at is maybe if anything, if it's about special effects, the role of special effects in idea communication and storytelling, civilization building through communication. The nuts and bolts of it might be the glue and screws and wires that you put it together with, but you're participating in some form of idea communication, ideally, or maybe you're not, right? Like you're using the special effects but not communicating any ideas, and that's actually what's going on today, where it's all pyrotechnics and very little story, if any at all, can be found. And what you can find often doesn't make any sense because they don't care. I mean, part of it is like one of the easiest cheap ways out I've noticed is something they call moral ambiguity. That's where you have like everybody is kind of like a little bit bad guy. So even the good guys are a little bit like not good, right? Mm-hmm. And can just have a chaotic ending because it's grand and that's real life. It's like a way out of storytelling. Like we'll have everybody fight, or there'll be a lot of loud noises, and then it'll be done.
Well, yeah.
Storytelling it's been devolving. That's my opinion. I mean, special effects themselves, in terms of visual effects, animation have evolved so tremendously, right, over some 30, 40 years, or actually over the entire course of film. If you want to go back to Georges Méliès, back to 1895, 1896, it's just been a continuous process of evolution.
Rolling it right back across the kind of history of film. But what we want to know about today is, want to find out a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, background about myself and how I got into special effects. It probably really starts with Halloween when I was a tiny kid, because culturally Halloween was just one of the holidays, and in Los Angeles, I suppose, and that was also one of the more fun. The fun thing about holidays is that they're fun. Right. So people get into those things. And Halloween, I guess at an early age, I noticed there was a lot of avenues to be creative just as part of the thing. It made sense it was a creative holiday by nature that encouraged if you're participating, you tend to come up with your own devices somehow. Or that's the idea. And then maybe I picked up a pad and paper and started sketching. I do remember doing that at a rather early age, and drawing pictures. And then eventually watching movies and noticing fantasy films early on, because certain movies really affect you at an early age and leave a strong imprint. And if you happen to see some of those fantasy films when you're a kid during your formative years, then it can have a very strong effect. And, seeing movies at a very young age, King Kong, Planet of the Apes, certain films at a very young age were very shocking, startling, overwhelming, in some instances. Many films, especially growing up in the early 70s, where films were starting to hit television that were unusual, revolutionary, strong films coming from independents were hitting television also.
What film do you think it was for you that kind of was that impactful?
Like Night of the Living Dead, like I saw that fairly early on. That was available on television. It was kind of fun, where there would typically be a warning when they did show it. And Night of the Living Dead was one of those very harsh horror films where you didn't run that every week, You might see that on TV once a year at night, and then they put a warning in front of it just to scare you.
Yeah, to raise the apprehension even more before you.
Your parents might not want you to be watching this if you're a small child. And Night of the Living Dead was one of those films. It was just a rather unpleasant, frightening experience, and then ends up very grimly, of course.
Yeah, but it's a great film. I mean, it was trend-setting.
Yeah. No, you can't. Yeah. How many people do zombies? Everybody now.
Yeah, there's a lot of people doing zombie stuff now as well. Did you how did you kind of get then invested in the interest of more kind of like doing special effects makeup and? Okay, well that came along. Yeah, because I was always doing Halloween makeups, and then towards a certain point around the mid 70s and the early 80s, it's called Rubber Revolution, was the rubber boom, as some people call it. Kind of started in some ways with Planet of the Apes and The Exorcist, and then began evolving with the technology of rubber makeup. People like Dick Smith and Rick Baker in the 70s. Around the 80s was when the rubber boom really hit, with probably first with The Howling, because that hit theaters before American Werewolf in London hit the theaters by several months, I believe. And those two were, for various reasons, competing features, because they were both high-tech werewolf movies. And in terms of the rubber special effect, at that point, after Dawn of the Dead, it was like, well, what can we see besides gore effects? And then it became transformation effects and creatures and things, right? And that became high profile enough in the media that I started turning my attentions towards learning how to do those things, making sculptures or rubber pieces. And at some point I met, I think when I was around 16 years old, at a convention, Richard Silverthorne, and he was a makeup artist. He's passed away. Actually, he passed away in the 1980s. But around the time I met him, he had done the effects for the movie Fear No Evil, which was a Frank LaLoggia movie, which you may know about, from 81, I think. It had performed reasonably well, and LaLoggia was putting together funding to do another movie called Lady in White, which was then going into production, and then several years later would would hit the theaters and then be on video.
Anyway, so I was making I did music videos for a little while on the Columbia lot, and around the corner from there was a part of the building, part of the Columbia Studios building was actually a scaled down version of what had originally been a drugstore at the corner, which was known as Columbia Drug Company, which had at one point a full working soda fountain, basically. And it was like a small coffee shop and a small drugstore with a newsstand on the side of it. And that had been there for probably 60 or 70 years, I believe. But at that point was being scaled down and turned into a makeup store, like specifically for professional products. And so that at that point, the store became known as Columbia Cosmetics, and it was no longer the Columbia Drugstore. And it only sold makeup for professional film and television. And so that was so kind of bizarre. But if you wanted to buy bottles of rubber and plastic and thousands of different types of makeup colors for different applications or different adhesives or hair pieces, in some cases they had rubber prosthetics and special effects materials, bald caps and wigs. Yeah, many thousands of colors available, different types for application on different surfaces. So I was going back and forth for a while, working a little bit on the Columbia lot, and then also just buying the materials at Columbia Cosmetics nearby.
Yeah, handy little location.
Well, yeah, it was open to the public at that time. I mean, in the sense, like there was no reason to go there unless you wanted to buy film makeup material, but it was not a part of the studio. You see, like right. You could just walk in and buy makeup. Anybody could, and that made it a very interesting place. It was a part of the studio, yet it was not. For any, the only real reason I had to go there would be that somebody was making some scary movie or something at some point, and I needed to buy some more rubber. And they had, like blood. They had fake blood, gallons of it, if you wanted it. Like they had special blood for use in the mouth or use in the eyes. Blood that was like a glue that would stick to you so it wouldn't wash off. Blood that was supposed to look dried up and old, as if it had been on your skin for many days. Like every variety.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool, to be honest. Like,
I like the idea of makeups. Puppets are fun too, of course, but I like the idea of makeups that are rigged up with devices underneath the skin that can perform and do other things besides what you're assuming a makeup can do, like a mechanical makeup, if you like. Those kinds of things are a lot of fun, I think. And it goes with it's like it furthers the idea that a makeup is a false image on the outside. It's a facade. So it's the idea of putting like a second face on somebody that is rigged with balloons or mechanisms so the lid open or something, or the veins on it can start filling up with air or liquid, or having several of those things happen at the same time. That too. Yeah.
Yeah, just a more kind of.
It became kind of attractive. And if you could learn how to do that, kind of a bizarre hobby, but for a little while there were enough of those kinds of movies being made that there were viable jobs available for a pretty good sprinkling of people around the North Hollywood, Burbank, Van Nuys areas, special effect shops. From the 80s into the 90s and then further on, their rubber effects came up, and then so then did computer effects, post-production, moreover. So you don't even have to be concerned with filming it so much, just animate it.
Throw in some CGI is the kind of go-to thing these days.
And now, like, it's like physical and digital sort of coexist rather nicely, I think.
You've worked on a lot of productions with varying budgets. So kind of like, how do you manage the resources as well as things like, the creative license, depending upon that budget? So say you're on certain set, like it might be really big budget, but you might not have as much time to do stuff. Whereas say like on a lower budget, they might give you more flexibility to try out different things.
I think the answer to that is dictated by the budget. I think you buy whatever you think you can, to do the job, right? The budgetary limitations are just there. That's whatever you have, whatever money is allotted allows you to, whatever freedom you have. So it's kind of it's self-dictated.
Yeah, but on say like a bigger production, can they be a bit more strict?
I would say so. Yeah, actually, yeah. Do things become more contractually obligational as budgets go up? I would say, well, probably, yeah.
Yeah, so that might restrict you creatively, not because you haven't got the budget, but just because there's like an exact set time frame, and it's like, right, okay, you can only do this, this, and this. Whereas somewhere with a less budget, or maybe some might say a less professional setup, gives you more opportunity to kind of go, oh, I'm going to do this little bit and kind of put my own.
Well, that in a way, your question opens up sort of a philosophical question, which is what are the optimum conditions for being creative? Like are they, if you have everything you want and all the time you want, or is it under some other circumstance that your best opportunities occur? And like the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. That certainly goes with effects. And quite often, like What's Eating Gilbert Grape was not a hugely expensive movie, as far as I know, to make in terms of its production, and the budget that I had to come up with the makeup design for Leonardo DiCaprio was not a lot of money either. But
that's interesting.
The demands of the makeup design, the prosthetic makeup, were kind of challenging in many ways. They wanted something that would be very easy to apply very quickly, within, say, several minutes, to get them ready for camera, as opposed to something that would take, say, a couple of hours to put on. Because
that's pretty interesting.
If you could get them ready for camera quicker, you could actually film more and not spend as much time maintaining the makeup. So they wanted a quick, invisible makeup that would distort one of his ears and also distort his upper lip. And that turned out to be a piece of acrylic that went behind his ear that was kind of a potato chip shape that distorted it out in a specific way on the camera left side. And then he was wearing a dental appliance. I would call it a dental plumper, but a flexible one, similar to the one that Marlon Brando wore in The Godfather, except this one was designed to be asymmetrical, and it was also made out of a combination of rigid and flexible materials, so that it was kind of mechanical and could move as he moved his upper lip. And it clipped onto his teeth in back, like his back molars, it clipped onto that. And then that part was rigid. And then it became a flexible piece that ran underneath his upper lip and existed there while he was wearing it. And because it was flexible and designed to move with his lip movements, it is difficult to read exactly what it is. It's not exactly a bone structure, is it? It's a flexible distortion of his upper lip. And you can see it occasionally. Sometimes when the camera is very low, I think you can see the appliance or a little hint of what he's wearing as he opens his mouth and says certain lines. So you can see it there. I think you can see the earpiece also.
Cool. And so you made all of that?
Yes.
Awesome.
And these are things that they're not supposed to be visible, or they were designed to be as unobtrusive as possible, like create the effect. Hopefully not more. The idea was it wasn't supposed to be obvious. We don't want it to be obvious that he's wearing anything, but it should noticeably change his face and distort it in an asymmetrical way. And it can't be seen as a makeup, because as soon as you clearly notice that he's wearing those things, the illusion really is destroyed, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, because as soon as people know that it's there,
Yeah, because typically I would make some kind of like something that went on the outside that would distort, like a rubber piece. But those things require application time, and they require, hours each production day usually to deal with. And that's expensive, and it would have required more daily assistance for me. So the idea was, could I in say a few weeks come up with some different versions of this, and which we then tested in Texas for a couple of weeks. And when the screen tests were done, that was the design was sort of written in stone at that point. And the director, Lasse Hallström, also consulted with me on the design and picked where he wanted the distortions to be, because I had brought out to Texas several versions of the makeup, which we tested under different lighting conditions and had the film developed, and then screened it the next day, and then looked at how the different versions photographed. So it was kind of based on that testing. And once that was decided on, I went back to, at that point I became confused and went back to Los Angeles, and then manufactured as many of those prosthetics as they needed, which wasn't that many. It was only a few, because they were reusable, and they were economical that way too. They were just kind of it got a nice effect, and wasn't too troublesome to deal with in production. And I personally believe that it helped Leonardo DiCaprio, I think, a little bit to be in character, having a little bit of a special makeup.
Yeah, it just helped him deliver his role a little easier, because he could realize the character. Yeah.
Yeah, and he did study tremendously, I believe, before doing the role. Like he did a lot of homework, and I believe visited some hospitals where he's met children who had various types of medical conditions, and sort of watched their mannerisms.
So he was that kind of dedicated, at such a, he was pretty young in Gilbert Grape, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was about 15 or 16 years old. I don't actually know. I think he was 15 or 16.
But to be put in that kind of attention to detail in his role, that's massive credit to him, of course.
It's surprising, yeah. But I could recognize that certainly in him because when he was talking about the research that he was doing, that was when we were making molds of his ears and things like that. When he was coming in to work with me in Los Angeles to get his face molded for the Gilbert Grape prosthetics, he was chatting with me and his parents who were typically with him about the work that they were doing, because I think probably his parents were driving him all over the place to do this type of research in order to study for the part and make it absolutely as real as you possibly could.
Because I think you've also mentioned that kind of the production were already talking about kind of Oscars before they even went to film.
That wasn't I wouldn't say that exactly, but there were certainly, because I think he had just come. The thing was, he had come off another film, I think, where he had played Robert De Niro's son or something like that. And he had just done something that was already getting a lot of notice. And Gilbert Grape was such a big role that it seemed just logical that it was going to be a very strong. And I just don't know. I just kind of it wasn't as if people were literally saying, "Oh, he might be, he might get an Oscar, he might be nominated for it." But there was certainly that feeling of gravity about the film, that it was such a character piece, and that was what was really attractive. It had an incredible cast, like the whole cast is it's remarkable, the cast of What's Eating Gilbert Grape. That was surprising. And it was freaky flying out to Texas and then occasionally bumping into the cast members in the hotel or in the elevator. That was like really weird.
Yeah, sure.
So you were. That's a strange experience, by the way. Like when you get onto a project and you accidentally just bump into people that you've been seeing on TV or in the movies for years, and they're just going about their business, and you're supposed to be doing that too. That can be a surreal moment. And there were a couple of those on Gilbert Grape where I bumped into somebody that it's like, oh, I'm standing one foot away from you.
In regards to films, is there like a favorite high or low budget movie that you've worked on? Like in regards to the work that you've done, that kind of really
high or low budget?
Yeah, I'm more of a low budget film fan, so let's go low budget because you've done a lot of really cool low budget horror films. And so, is there something that you've worked on that really just kind of stands out as a strong memory of like, wow, I was really impressed with the work I did on that film?
Well, okay, Gilbert Grape was probably one of those, and I'd say Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare was one of those. That I did that about a year before doing Gilbert Grape, and that was that was for John Beekler's company, MMI, Mechanical Makeup Imageries. John passed away. He died about a year ago, I believe.
Oh.
That was my first job with John Beekler. I think I did 7 or 8 or 9 films with him. So some of them very small. And in the case of Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, they needed someone to do a lot of rubber makeups for Freddy's victims most of the time. So there were a lot of rubber makeups, and the big key, I think the keystone sequence is the Carlos sequence, which is a very long, protracted makeup effect scene in terms of the number of makeup changes and devices that you see in the scene. And it also involves puppet heads and quite a lot of special effects, stunt makeups where a stunt man has to look like the character who's being, attacked by Freddy, and a lot of continuity issues. And it took about 10 days to film, and it had a lot of different makeup changes. It took 10 days to film because it had a lot of makeup changes. You couldn't get it all at once. It was a linear progression of a scene where the kid gradually gets further and further mutilated, basically, by Freddy. Like the makeup has a very linear progression to it, and it starts off with one of his ears being sliced off on one side. That made it extremely difficult because it's quite easy to make it look like you're adding something to somebody, but if you try to make it look like a part of somebody is missing, like their ear or their nose, something that is naturally kind of protrusive, and you're not relying on digital effects to get the effect, that presents a very strange problem. So the beginning of the scene has him having his ear sliced off on one side, and that made the entire sequence much more complicated because everything that happens to him subsequent to that is further and further damaging to him, and more makeup had to be added to him, and eventually it became a mechanical makeup that had tubes and wires and things inside it to operate the movements of it. So it was a more complex scene. It also featured hair pieces by this incredible artist named Jack Bricker, who had done hair pieces for, I believe, the Terminator, and I think he's done a lot of stuff on K&B's really big projects. A real genius. And so the wig pieces that went on Carlos's makeups, when I had to make it look like his ear was missing, those were these beautiful human hair pieces that Jack Bricker had made. They were made out of lace, and they had each individual hair tied on, just beautifully made. Wow. And so those were reusable. Each day I could remove those hair pieces and clean them carefully, prepare them for the next day that we filmed. And those hair pieces also were used on dummy heads of the character, which I think we blew up a couple of those too. There are several. There's 5 or 6 shots in the sequence featuring a dummy head of Carlos, and those were built by Chris Robbins and Nick Mara. They were the general supervisors on the whole show for Beekler, and they typically built all the puppets that you see. And I was mainly concerned with stuff that was glued on to people. And since Carlos was a lot of glue every day, it almost became like the big glue job of the whole movie. It was just it was every day. This actor was incredible to go through that. I don't know how an actor can do that, to sit to deal with that kind of stuff, to wake up at 3 a.m, to have glue put all over your head, and every day for 10 days. I don't know how you could do something like that.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
He did it. Yeah, that was
cool,
Ricky Dean Logan. Ricky Dean was incredibly patient and professional through that process, having, because it starts with, before you even have any makeups done, you have to go in and get your head molded, or if they're building a dummy of you, then they're going to mold your body or something. So he had all that stuff done. So he'd already been through an ordeal before he even acted in the film. He was having dummies made of him by Chris and Nick.
it also seems like a massive credit to like yourself and the Beekler team, you know, that the amount of work you have to do, like to turn around in the time. It seems like you were saying, just, you know, making things appear as if they're not there, that are still there, you know, like building up, you know, grafting up, you know, a face to make something look like it's disappeared. I mean, that's incredible work. I mean, massive kudos.
Well, we can go back to we have to go back to Juan Cheney again, because the ear thing was really going back to Juan Cheney's techniques when he did Phantom of the Opera, where he glued his ears to the side of his head to encourage this appearance that he had a skull-like head. He just said, well, I can't cut my ears off, but I can glue them flat.
It can't go full Van Gogh, you know, just like, let's just...
There's no need to go that far. Yeah. But he would do things like he would go as far as he could. And so we did that to Ricky for his ear. Like first I flattened his hair down, if you want to know the exact thing.
Yeah, sure.
His hair got flattened on one side of his head. And then as soon as that was as flat as possible, I glued his ear to his hair, which was encased in plastic at that point, because I sprayed his, hair with plastic hairspray. And then I glued another piece of rubber on top of that to just further hold his ear down. And then we added the tubes and the additional prosthetics and things to encourage this effect that his ear was missing. It had been sliced off, and it kind of adjusted the level of flesh on his face, so that if you looked at it from the right angles, it would appear as though his ear was gone. And which is really
that's cool.
Kind of weird. And every single day he had to have that. At least that at the very beginning of the day was gluing one of his ears to the side of his head. And on one of the days we had to glue both of his ears to the side of his head because he had a lot of inflating effects going on both sides. One of the days, he was in so much glue. I've never put so much glue on one person, just their head. He was glued in really, really well.
Is that hard on the skin to be putting that much glue on and taking it off so regularly?
Well, yeah. I think it is.
That's like, job's got to be done. It's like,
yeah. Well, it was like because you typically at the very least you try to stagger it so that those 10 days don't all happen in a row, right? Like maybe it's spaced out over a couple of weeks, so it's only a few days at a time. But the idea is to use like there's usually some kind of a barrier that you can put on the person's skin to seal it from the glue, to protect the skin first off. Like a liquid bandage is sometimes used to protect the skin.
oh, okay.
There's things like that that make removal easier, but I think ultimately it's the same. You're still just gluing somebody in really, really well under layers and layers of stuff to get the effect. And then as soon as it's filmed, there's no reason for them to wear it. So then but they can't just rip it off. It has to be carefully removed so that they don't get hurt removing it. So that typically will take, in Ricky Dean's case, usually that was at least 30 to 45 minutes just to get the stuff off afterwards. And putting his makeup on was maybe between 2 to 3 hours each day, depending on what was being done. Rather grueling for him. But I thought it was a lot of fun. He was the character I made up the most.
Yeah, Milo obviously does a bit of acting, and he's been in makeup, a few times. But just I think he's he's envisaging the kind of 4 to 5 hours being in makeup, I think.
Yeah, never that bad. Never that bad. The worst I've ever had to deal with was fake sideburns for a play. They had to be glued on and taken off each night.
So that was Freddie's Dead, and that was a lot of fun. And then that wasn't a big paying movie, but it was paying consistently for a couple of months there, and was a lot of fun to work on. And Batman and Robin was a tremendous amount of fun. That was cool. That went on for some almost a year, I think. Batman and Robin, and that was mainly not as a makeup artist, but as a workshop technician.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so that's the other side of the other side of the rainbow. There's some jobs where they're not necessarily creatively satisfying at all, but they're merely jobs to build things. They're not as much fun, but they'll pay you to stand there and do it.
Sure, yeah.
And so I've done a lot of that stuff too, where I'm not emotionally attached to the stuff as much as somebody else is.
Yeah. And if it's paying the rent ultimately, then that's another good pointer, even if it's not satisfying your full creative needs. But yes, so yeah, Roger, you've been on obviously been on Freddie's Dead, Gilbert Grape, with obviously Leo DiCaprio. But because the thing is, on Rip It Up, we've got this regular question that asks, and grapes, they go really well with cheese. So I've got to ask you, what is one of your favorite cheeses, Rod?
Blue Stilton. Yeah, if you there's a book called 50
Stories, edited by Juan Cheney, and there's a story in it called Ripe Stilton. And this is how I learned about Stilton cheese. I had no interest at all in Stilton cheese until I read this story about how if you eat this cheese, you will have nightmares about zombies coming back from the grave. And I said, okay, where do I get this? And yeah, so now I'll have some, but in Los Angeles, it's very hard to find unless you're near a specialty store.
Yeah, see, in the UK, it's you literally, the UK, you go into literally any shop really that sells food, and there'll be a wedge of Stilton knocking around.
See, that's horrifying to me. It's wrong. But then again, this is Los Angeles, which is really far away from where Stilton cheese is made, right?
Very true.
Yeah. It's sort of embarrassing, but that's the real answer is Stilton.
It's a good answer.
I wish I had some right now.
Stilton has been a popular answer on here. I think 3 of our guests have said Stilton. So you're not alone in the Stilton state.
Is that really true?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did they say it for similar reasons?
No.
No.
Okay.
Well, let's move off of cheese, as exciting as the subject is. And since you're such an incredible SFX professional, can you give us a step-by-step talk through on how to create appliances from one of your films? But before doing that, what exactly are appliances?
Appliances are, traditionally they're made out of rubber. Well, let's say, elf ears and elf noses. Yeah, okay, there you go. And Mr. Spock ears. He's known as a kind of a space elf, right? Yeah. If you need to change an actor's face in a 3-dimensional way, an appliance will do that. Of course, a hairpiece is also an appliance, right? So the term appliance doesn't apply specifically to something that's supposed to look like skin. It can be anything that you put on the actor to change their appearance.
Okay.
So it can involve all kinds of things, but from a really basic generic perspective, think of it as a rubber nose or a pointy ear tip that you glue on somebody's ears to make them look like an elf. or a vampire. Vampire fangs, also, a common example of an appliance. If you're making something like that, how do you go ahead and make one?
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
Yeah.
So you will take the actor that you're going to use and use a mold making material like alginate, for example, to make a mold of their face or the part of their body that you're going to add something to. And now you have a model on which you can build your appliance, which is often done in clay, modeled onto the duplicate of the actor. So you kind of image that in clay and make another mold of that clay sculpture. After you pop those molds apart and clean out the clay of the sculpture, then you can inject foam rubber or some kind of plastic material inside the mold. Yeah, you start out with it's like you make a duplicate of the actor, and then you build it onto that. And as long as it fits that, then you're good. How's that? And do you have any other questions? What else would you like to know?
All kinds of stuff.
Oh my God. Can I swear? Can I say curse words?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Are you gonna use them if I swear?
Yeah, definitely.
Or should I swear, or is that in bad taste?
I swear all the time. Do you want me to swear right now? Fuck, shit.
Yeah.
Bastard.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So you're perfectly fine. No
good.
worries.
Oh, well, actually, you know what? You can swear, and then I won't have to.
Okay.
So then I if somebody objects, I'll just say, well, I didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, if you want,
what
you can do is say,
it was them.
Say, you can swear, and then I'll just remove you swearing, and then I'll re-record myself swearing, and then just put that over your swear word.
as like the blooper, but it's
yeah.
That might work. Okay.
Yeah, you can absolutely swear any moment that you wish.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it until I realized I haven't said a single naughty word this whole time. I didn't ask permission. I thought, well, I'll at least ask. Now I know it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, you worked from Dusk Till Dawn, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez films. Any interesting story from that film that you can tell us while swearing? Because, it's Tarantino. There's a lot of swearing.
Well, I can say that that was just for a few weeks, and that was all in the shop. That was just mostly just making molds of people's faces or making molds of vampire appliances. So that was mainly technical. And I can't say it was really very interesting, aside from it being just a technical challenge. I do remember noticing that K&B was kind of like Don Post Studios, which I had worked with in the early 90s. In that,
so K&B is Nicotero's.
Yes. Yeah, K&B is Nicotero's company, and they woke up early in the morning and finished up early in the day, and it was something bizarre, like 6:30 or 7 in the morning until 2:30 p.m. and then everybody just left.
Nice.
And the idea was get up early, work like a maniac, and then you still have part of the day to go out and experience the world. So it was,
that sounds pretty ideal.
That was the same thing at Don Post Studios. A few years previous, I'd been there for a Disneyland show. We were working on a Disneyland stage show based on the Dick Tracy movie, the Disney Warren Beatty Dick Tracy movie, which had a stage show at Disneyland, and they required some rubber masks that looked like the Dick Tracy villain characters that could do some moving and singing and talking on stage. And so at Don Post Studios, there was this job, which I wandered in there somehow. I don't remember exactly how I got that, but we made masks for a couple of months, I think. Lots and lots of masks, and they were foam rubber, so they were kind of high tech, flexible masks. And I guess they were something like they were not like thin foam latex appliances. They were like thicker foam rubber overhead masks that were somewhat photoreal, but designed for repeated use on stage. So they were reusable. And so that was kind of fun. And Don Post Studios, this by the way was, I'm sure you know about Don Post Studios. They've made some of the finest Halloween masks in the world for decades and decades. And they also produced the masks for Halloween 3. And Don Post Studios can be seen in Halloween 3 in the scenes at the so-called Mask Factory that Connell Cochran is running, where they're making those masks. And so the mask factory that you see in the film Halloween 3, in other words, is actually the Don Post Studios real rubber mask factory. And it was the same over there. They woke up, they wanted you to get there at 6:30 in the morning, I think, and start making masks. And then around 1:30 or 2, everyone left.
That's kind of great work ethic, to kind of get everything done. And then, like you say, you've got the rest of the day to wherever you're at, you can just go and explore or just live, do things.
It felt kind of Spartan in a way, there was something about the attitude of it, just, get up and work like a machine, then enjoy yourself. The day, it's like you don't have to work until it actually gets dark outside.
Yeah, actually have some of the day to explore.
Yeah, and it's also about bodily control. Like, you will force yourself to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and do this, and you will be rewarded for doing it by having the rest of the day. And you can enjoy yourself. Yeah, just the mechanism of it, I thought was fun. And K&B was like that. They were very seriously workers when they were in the shop. And then a little while after most people would be having lunch, everyone would be done and they would just split until the next crack of dawn workday. So that was just a few weeks, as I recall, but it was a lot of fun and very frantic.
Yeah, just kind of like epitomizes the whole, work hard, play hard kind of mantra, that's banded around.
Yeah, with emphasis on man. Yeah, the mantra. Well, it's certainly it felt very testosterone infused.
I'm sure, yeah.
And Jolt Cola was out around 88, and Dusk Till Dawn was 93, I think, something like that, 93, 94. And so, but like Jolt Cola, which was the double caffeine cola, I don't think it even exists anymore. But that was popular at that time.
I remember Jolt Cola.
Some effects people, Jolt Cola. It actually had a lightning bolt going through.
The bounce off the walls cola.
Yeah. That's the sort of thing you drink when you have to get up and at 5 a.m. to do something.
Today in the UK, they have something called Monster, which is kind of.
Oh yeah, the Monster energy drink. Well now it's kind of like, now caffeine drinks are sort of like they're completely unchained, right?
Yeah.
Now it's, Jolt Cola was was like cutting edge at the time, but the floodgates have opened since then.
Yeah, it's just like just whack it, call it a soft drink and whack as much caffeine in as you like, kind of. So yeah, Rod. So this is kind of stage of the show where you get to turn the tables, and this is our Ask an American feature. So you get to ask Milo.
Okay. This is boy. Okay, I've been waiting for this part. This is extremely exciting.
So is Milo. He's so enthralled about this.
Okay, all right, and I don't really know, because I haven't traveled to many states in the United States. I've only traveled to, I think, 4 or 5 states, you might say. And you're from Washington, right? Seattle, Washington?
Yes.
Okay, Seattle, Washington is where you're from. And that's a really forested area, isn't it?
Yes.
Is this the same place that other people call Washington State? Well, there's Washington, D.C., and then there's Washington State, and then there's Seattle, Washington, and I don't know which is which because I haven't actually visited those places.
Yeah. Washington and Washington State are the same. The reason why we often say Washington State is because if we say Washington, people think Washington, D.C. So it's just Washingtonians' way of making sure that people know we're talking about the state of Washington versus the city of Washington, D.C. So that's why we do that.
Okay, so now you're from Washington State now, and that's a foresty area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trees everywhere, right?
Western Washington is, yeah.
All right. What do you think about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster? That's what I want to know. Yeah.
So
I want to ask an American, what do you think about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster?
I've got a funny Bigfoot story, actually. So I used to have a roommate, and her boyfriend at the time would actually go out squatching or Sasquatching, which is basically a group of people.
They were actual Bigfoot hunters. And so she had, or I don't know if she still has it, but an actual mold of Bigfoot's mold, print that, was found in the ground or kind of thing. And yeah, so they would go out, and they were telling me this one time they were out camping, and what they would do is they'd in the evening, they would cook bacon, assuming that for some reason that the smell of bacon would entice Bigfoot to come to their camp and stuff. And so yeah, I actually know 2 people that believe in Bigfoot and have gone out looking for him and never found him, interestingly enough. The Loch Ness Monster, I've been to Loch Ness. I've been there, actually, since I moved here to the UK. We did a road trip and went up to Loch Ness. Did not see the Loch Ness Monster either, but we did buy a whiskey that was called the Loch Ness Whiskey, which was not very good.
Okay. Do you, Milo, do you believe that either Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster might be real things and not just pure folklore or imagination?
I think it's possible that the Loch Ness Monster existed at some point in time, because there's still the potential that, if it died, the bones are down there somewhere. So I do think that's possible that it potentially existed at some point and it's just some holdover from, a long time ago. I don't believe in Bigfoot. I mean, the United States is so populated, and the fact that they've never found proof of Bigfoot, like legitimate proof, they've never found bones or anything like that. It's interesting that there's a comedian there used to be a comedian, he's dead now, and he has a joke about Bigfoot. And his joke was about how every picture of Bigfoot is blurry. And he's like, I think it's more worrying, not that just that there's this, big hairy monster out there, but there's this big hairy monster out there running around that's permanently out of focus. Like, how creepy is that? Yeah. That something is running around that's permanently out of focus.
Yeah, you'd think at least one semi-decent photographer would have, like a pro wildlife photographer, sat in wait if they were into, Bigfoot hunting as well. Like, it had got a pretty good image. But
or bones or something, from a dead one or something. I mean, we've found, very obscure dinosaur bones from hundreds of thousands of years ago, yet they can't find a Bigfoot bone anywhere.
No modern Bigfoot.
Not in my opinion. No. Do you believe? I mean, you're from the U.S., Rod. Are you a Bigfooter?
Well, I know. Well, okay. I've read a few books on the subject. I generally speaking, this is it's a weird question. I'm not decided on whether I think it exists. Partially because I'm not like, if I can't define what it is I'm talking about, I can't really be decided on whether I think it exists, because I don't think it would be, right? It's a matter of definition also.
Yeah.
Do I think there could be a monkey, or a large ape? That's the question. I'm not decided. I really don't know. I'm halfway between thinking, yeah, that's possible, and where's the evidence? I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not.
Yeah.
As to the Loch Ness Monster, I think there's been some really good film evidence of it. Dinsdale film from 1960 is positive proof.
yeah, I think there's definitely. I think there could be some form of serpent, fish, eel, or even a family of in Loch Ness that is, there's so much about the oceans and things that we've not discovered yet or are still discovering. So there could well be. I think I would be more convinced on Loch Ness monster or Loch Ness, serpent than the Bigfoot. But I do think there is, or there has been, but historically, like, woolly mammoths. So I reckon there could have been some form of like large animal or large bear that roamed and lived in the forests in the US years ago as well. But today, well, maybe, but that's my standpoint. But my opinion is worth, well, I don't know, not a lot.
I don't know
Cool.
if I should even get into all the other stuff. I mean, there's some Bigfoot stories where there are other bizarre elements entwined into the story, suggesting that it's not a normal biological creature the way we might conventionally think of one, and might be more akin to the nature of psychic phenomena. We're seeing a spirit. It's not an actual animal, but it's something that occasionally seems to be one. But but that's like, do you believe in ghosts? That's the same kind of question. Because if you don't know what it is, like if science hasn't defined what a ghost is, then officially it doesn't exist. So you can't actually define what it is. So the question of belief, like whether you believe in the existence of something that isn't officially codified, is based on your own personal perception, right? And that's on the topic that nobody really understands because there's no consensus.
Sure.
So I think to answer my own question about what do you believe in, I actually think reality, the entirety of reality, is actually a continuous phenomenon that we don't understand, but we're constantly trying to measure it and figure out how it works. Science seems to exist to figure out the vast unknown of reality. So I would say everything that you're experiencing right now, the building that you're sitting in, the street outside the building, the trees on the street, those are all part of that phenomenal reality. It's just a lot of it happens so consistently that you take it for granted. You say, people ask, like somebody asked me, do you really think there's Bigfoot? And and they act as though it's like such a remarkable, incredible thing that, how could it possibly be such a thing? But the everyday reality that they're experiencing is just as outlandish, if not vastly more so, and you take it continually for granted every day when you wake up. So, what exactly about the Bigfoot is unbelievable seems to relate to its unrepeatability, but I would just as easily question the repeatable stuff. Like, why is that tree outside the building every day? Is that, is that that might be too abstract and too philosophical.
No, works for us. Okay, well, since you got to ask me a question, I've occasionally turned it around onto Kev on this show, and he's got the Ask an American, so I've got the Ask a Brit. So this is, maybe you might want to know this as well, Rod. Guy Fawkes is celebrated here in the United Kingdom, in London specifically, on November 1st. November 5th. There's a big party. You guys light off fireworks to celebrate this guy. Why do you celebrate a guy that attempted to blow up your government?
Yeah,
it's an interesting question, and there's a lot of stuff about the UK that is very, very questionable in a modern sense. We do a lot of things today that still celebrates things that are probably, they're out of vogue. They're not really. It's like, oh yeah, come on, mum, let's just grab me to this bonfire and we'll burn this gentleman on a large bonfire. We'll all celebrate.
Guy Fawkes Day involves burning effigies of Guy Fawkes, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we celebrate like him blowing up or attempting to blow up the Houses of Parliament, but then we also celebrate kind of like, doing a witch hunt essentially, and, reenacting a witch hunt en masse across the nation, and just, burning him, in a Wicker Man style, and just, let's all just celebrate. Let's just tuck into our food. But why? Yeah, I don't know why really, other than maybe there is an element of retribution in there, that we're kind of like celebrating both sides of it. Perhaps some people celebrate it because it's a moment that didn't get Parliament, burned down. It was a failed coup kind of thing. And then they're also then celebrating the fact that this individual didn't get the chance to, do it. So yeah, we'll chuck him on a fire. But it is a strange celebration. The fact that we still celebrate today in the way, I'm pretty certain most people today, a bit like kind of how a lot of modern festivities, just Easter and Christmas, a lot of the core values, whichever side of the coin you sit on it, those have for a lot of people have largely gone today. It's just like, oh, what can I get off this person, and what can I like the things are symbolized slightly different. And so I think Guy Fawkes is probably in a similar way, that we go and celebrate bonfire night, but most of the kids today growing up aren't going to be thinking about, they learn about it in school, but they aren't going to be thinking about, oh yeah, what's Guy Fawkes? They're just going to be thinking about, how's dad bought the best fireworks in town that look the best, and what food are we going to have to eat? And basically, they're going to just have a good time. But yeah, that is an interesting question, Mark.
And it happens like just a few days, or the original event took place a few days after the Halloween.
No, it's literally kind of just on the one. You guys have, obviously, like I say, Halloween's massive in the US. The UK is nowhere near America in terms of celebrating Halloween, like, unless you're really into it, and your whole party's like us growing up. We used to have a Halloween party every year, but it wasn't like a whole, like, say, through the whole of October. There wasn't a huge kind of community element either, that where like people might kind of like try and outdo each other and go, or just generally get together more. It was very, Halloween and then Guy Fawkes is the same. It's literally, if you're choosing to celebrate, it's almost very insular event, and then you're inviting whoever like your family and things like that, but not so much like kind of that kind of like community spirit that I think I'm assuming, but I think from the things I've seen and a few of the people that I know that live over in the States, that Halloween really does, even if you're not that into it yourself, you still end up getting dragged into it.
Yeah, like Halloween's pretty huge there because, it involves kids running around and dressing up and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'd say Halloween is certainly much larger there than it is here.
Yeah, it seems like Halloween in the States seems to be celebrated. Well, it's celebrated everywhere, but in pockets. There will be certain communities where you'll see it just happening more, and then areas where it's just not absorbed at all. Some people go very crazy for Halloween, the decorations and the celebration of it, attending, entertainment events, haunted mazes and walkthroughs and shows and things like that.
Yeah, they do have a few, like, obviously they're not on the scale of the US, but they do have a few over here. Like, you can go to like kind of mazes basically, where you can go around and they've got people hiding in the maze and kind of like spooking people. And so, I mean, I kind of like that kind of thing. We've got kind of like these like different versions of like dungeon kind of setups where there's actors in them. And there's one actually in the north of England. I think northwest of England, so just above Manchester in the UK. And you can go there, and it's like a walkthrough of some of the most well-known horror movies, and you'll get chased by Jason, Freddy. Freddy comes out, Hannibal Lecter's in there. So there's like kind of like 8 to 10 different characters in there, and you walk through and kind of relive the like major scenes. I think that's pretty cool. It gets the heart going.
That sounds like fun to me. That sounds like your basic haunted house attraction. I think a good generic way to call it is a haunted attraction. Like a walk-through show.
I think the name of it is actually called the Passage of Horrors, which is pretty.
Passage of Horrors. That's nice.
Yeah, Passage of Horrors, and it's in Blackpool, UK. So
that sounds like fun.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to visit it this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, Milo, you get a chance to go a bit, further up again.
Yeah, while I'm living here.
So sorry, I'm going to come to kind of one of the last questions that we'll have for you, and this is kind of going to go towards one of the guys you worked with, director Andy Milligan, and yeah, I just want to find out because Andy was, for people who don't know, Andy was like he's synonymous with kind of like cult horror directing, and yeah, I want to see, because you worked with him on 2 movies, Monstrosity and The Weirdo, and yeah, I want to kind of give us kind of nod to Andy, your own personal experiences, and also, the things that you did on like those sets, because I believe they were pretty towards the end of his career, and they were fairly pretty very low budget.
They were extremely low budget. I think he made only one other film after the 2 that I did with him, and I haven't seen that film. That one's called Surgikill. But Monstrosity and Weirdo, I had been working on a project in West Hollywood called Dark Romances in 1986. That's where I met Frank Stevens, I still work with today. While I was working on Dark Romances, which was a low-budget anthology horror type thing, I was doing special effects, and then was given an episode of it to write and direct, which turned out to be fun. And while I was doing that, one of the because there were a lot of actors coming through Easy TV, that production facility at the time, and one of them was named Joel Weiss. He played the character of Angelo the Angel in Monstrosity. He was also in the film The Warriors, the Walter Hill film The Warriors. David Patrick Kelly's right-hand man. If you want to see Joel Weiss as a young man in the early 80s, you can see The Warriors. I met him on some project while he was walking through Easy TV, and he saw that I was doing some makeup and said that he was working with Andy Milligan and wanted to introduce me to Milligan. And just as a coincidence, I had been, it's publicity. I'd been reading Fangoria magazine. There was an interview with Milligan a couple of months back. So I was familiar somewhat with Milligan's reputation as a low-budget filmmaker. When I heard that Milligan was looking for a makeup artist, I just kind of said, I'll do that. If, I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
Certainly. and Joel said, well, I'll introduce you to him, and a few days afterwards, I went down to Andy's house, which he was renting off of Orange Avenue in Hollywood. House, which you can see in Monstrosity, because when Andy was renting a house, he was filming there, and getting, a very frugal guy. Never spend anything unless you get something out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so Monstrosity was a whole plate of makeups and effects, and they needed to be started immediately. And it was what makeup artists call an out of the kit type of movie, where you bring your kit full of stuff and just start making stuff on the spot. There isn't so much time to manufacture things ahead of time.
Yeah, because what kind of budget did you have for those movies?
It was very little. Yeah, there was very little money. It was about $1,000. I think it was exactly $1,000, and that was for everything, including the gas money, including lunch.
Wow.
Because Andy, kind of like certain other people, Andy was not going to feed you anything. He wasn't going to buy you a sandwich, and he definitely wasn't going to buy 10 or 12 people sandwich.
It's not like, equity rates, kind of.
No, because this was not. It was not one of those real money type movies. It's like the guy making lemonade in the kitchen is the filmmaker, and he just can't afford to buy you a sandwich. So you have to eat before you get there and starve the rest of the day. Typically, Andy Milligan would have like an igloo cooler full of cans of soda, like cola, 7-Up, things like that. And that was all you had. Like you just drank sugar and water, and that was it. There wasn't even any real coffee, because Milligan had a blood pressure problem and couldn't have caffeine. It was bad for his blood pressure. So there was no coffee. And the only thing there was decaf, and that's not real coffee.
Oh, wow.
I was immediately, I was really incensed by that right off the bat. Like, something is wrong here. If I can't, if I look through an entire house for coffee and all I can find is some packets of decaf, that's disturbing to me. That's not right. I'm not gonna just stand for that. It's not cool.
So on set, did that, though, even though there was limited budget, did it give you quite a bit of could you do a few things that you wanted to do? Like just a few signature things that you wanted to put in there?
Well, I had wanted to do gelatin appliances. I got to mess around with gelatin a little bit on Monstrosity, and also doing some compressed air blood effects for the end scenes. A lot of the blood was pumped through tubes. I mean, there was compressed air for some of it. So I was having fun messing around with it, but it wasn't really that kind of a fun project. It was really more like, we just need this monster and these murder scenes.
Because I think I've read, yeah, that you put something in, like one of the models, one of the dummies. Sorry, you put something in there.
Oh, you're talking about the Gumby.
Yeah, what's that? Because I don't know what's a Gumby.
Well, Milo might know what Gumby is, right? I'm guessing
The stop motion little little guy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I used to have a rubber Gumby doll, and I liked it so much that I made a mold of it so I could duplicate it and make multiple Gumbies. Like, that's one of the things that a person does. If you can make molds of things, you go, well, that's such a nice thing. I'd like to have 10 of it, or maybe 20, like if you like a garden gnome, that's what happens to me. I'll buy a garden gnome and think of it as, well, now because I can duplicate this, I now actually have 20 or 30 garden gnomes. Nobody realizes that yet. That's all.
So what happened with the Gumbies? Yeah.
Well, I made rubber Gumbies specifically to put inside gore effects in the 80s. If you could reach and, like pull a bunch of bloody, flesh and guts out of an effect, and see if you could hide a Gumby inside there, or maybe paint it red or cover it with something, and see if you could get it in the film without anybody realizing that you had done it.
No, I get it.
A couple of times I put Gumbies inside the effects, and you can see that Gumby in, I believe, Dark Romance. Dark Romances has a shot where you can see a Gumby's legs wiggling around and see that character gets his head pulled off.
That's kind of a cool little secret.
Yeah, that's cool.
Insertion, yeah.
Yeah, it goes back a little bit too. I believe it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind with the mothership model. They had hidden little tiny things in the details of that, so that in certain shots, if you're looking at it correctly, you'll notice tiny details that only obsessed fans will notice. Like there's a little tiny R2-D2, I believe, on the mothership at one point, as the camera studies the thousands and thousands of details. So yeah, I love jokes that, like disguised jokes. That's fun too. Yeah, like the red shirts in Star Trek. It was a convention on the show where they started having the red shirts being worn by the away team crew members that were probably going to get killed as soon as they got to the planet. And then the fans started noticing that was in the writing of the show or the design of the show. And now it's so acknowledged that the term red shirt is actually used in these new generation Star Trek films and projects. They actually call them red shirts now. So somebody going on a dangerous mission has to put on the red shirts. It's like it's bizarre. Like it's like an in joke can't be an in joke anymore. It has to be dragged out into the sun, writhing and suffering. But yeah, Andy Milligan was a lot of fun to work with, and I enjoyed doing that stuff every day. It was actually as long as you kept moving, it worked fine. And I've mentioned before that he filmed in sequence. He filmed his cuts in sequence. And that meant that he was actually making up the shot list in his mind as he was filming. He was picking camera angles individually. He had a wooden tripod, like wood and metal tripod, like a really old thing that I guess he was dragging around everywhere. And he physically set up the camera every single shot that he got, and had the actors freeze at the end of a good take so that he could pick up the camera and the tripod and walk around to another position and then begin filming the continuation of the scene. So the actors would actually freeze in position while he moved the camera, and then resumed moving their hands and mouths when he started filming again from another angle. So when you look at the cutting, that's what you're seeing. It's a very weird way to film, and nobody I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone filming like that.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah, the sequencing, but that's kind of trying to just do one continuous shot. But yeah,
cool. All right, Rod, we should probably wrap it up here because we've kind of monopolized a lot of your time. So do you have any upcoming projects or anything that you're working on that you want to mention on the show?
Well, I have a thing called the Haunted Curve, which is one of the new Brink Stevens projects that I'm producing it with her. Right now, it's going to be an audio podcast. At some point, I'd like to turn the Haunted Curve into a film project. Currently, right now, it's easier to do audio productions for me, so we're going to start with that one. Although I would like to detour you over to some of the YouTube projects that we've done, because those are, I think, easy to link to, so I can put those in the posts.
So what's kind of like your social media for people viewing? They can get kind of like find your stuff and check you out.
Yeah, you can just go to Facebook. Just look up Rod Matsui on Facebook. And so I typically keep those links to those videos, like any current or recent video productions. I have those kind of in rotation on the Facebook page so you can see what's being done at present.
Cool.
Okay. We'll look them up. Sweet. Well, thanks a lot, Rod. We really appreciate you chatting with us. It's just fascinating hearing some of the stories, of such interesting films.
Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. Do you have any other questions at all?
Probably, but we could literally talk for hours.
Yeah.
Because you've worked on so many fascinating films, but no, I would say we should definitely wrap it up. We don't want to take too long.
Yeah, I mean, for you, it's whatever time it is now. It's 10:30 here, so 2:30. So you can imagine you've just now finished working on one of these intensive sets for the day, and you've got the rest of the day to do what you want now. But I must say it was Rod's birthday yesterday, so we're going to say happy birthday from Rip It Up.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you. Yes, I was downplaying it yesterday because I didn't want to I didn't want to mention it because everybody else was bugging me about it. I thought, well, I'll just not mention that. But yeah, fortuitously, we're recording this here on August 20, and yes, yesterday was my birthday. So I'm like 50-something years old. I'll have to check.
Yeah, I stopped counting when I got past like 17, I think. So.
Yeah, I don't believe in the counting thing. I don't believe in growing old.
Yeah,
it doesn't. I'm not. The idea doesn't attract me.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you.
But it's a lovely day. I'm sure it's very dark outside, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I might watch a Bowery Boys movie, and that Bowery Boys movie might be Bowery Boys Meet the Monsters, and you can put a really cool poster up for that, because there's some really cool posters of that. I happen to have that film not 4 feet away from me in a CD case.
All right.
Awesome.
So I encourage you to watch some comedic horror films yourself at the next opportunity, because I do want to see more upbeat horror. I think horror is really, really grim. Our society is kind of descending into a kind of a philosophical, chaotic period. I think we've let ourselves do that with our own media. I'd like to see more positive thinking media.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's kind of like horror seems to be going down the route where it doesn't scare us in the way that we kind of glamorize the really horrific elements, rather than being like, shit, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to, that dude scares me. I don't want to emulate him. I want to keep away from him.
Yeah. We're kind of paraphrasing a little bit. It's good that we can at least paraphrase a little from our previous phone discussion. There's been a nihilistic de-evolution of the philosophy in horror in modern literature, modern films, culture. Just kind of descending from being a dramatic form to being a very nihilistic, death-loving sort of form, where we idolize, or the audience increasingly idolizes these evil characters, and they're not. These aren't the cautionary tales, the fairy tales that they used to, which would reinforce societal values. They kind of chant the praises of these evil figures, and I think that's not cool.
Yeah, certainly.
So I'm getting all preachy there, but that's but I did want to at least cover it, because that was sort of, because we were getting into the nuts and bolts of building the effects. But the mythology, I've been keeping an eye on it, and I think it needs an infusion. There needs to be better philosophies expressed through this popular entertainment that we're consuming, because that's all we're doing is consuming it. I think it should be something good. I think it's really we make junk food entertainment for ourselves. It's just not. It's not reinforcing to us as people.
We certainly should be telling better stories through our medium, rather than, like you say, just cash cowing franchises of movies, etc. But no, Gerard, it's been absolutely a pleasure. As Milo said, there's tons of other stuff that we could cover as well, which unfortunately time doesn't allow us to. But a part 2 is certainly, we can deep dive on another area. So, but
there's definitely some fun stuff to chat about. But very lovely doing a show with you. It's been a pleasure to talk to Milo and yourself, Kev.
No, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, man.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Rod.
Cheers.
Take care.
Cheers, Rod.
Have a great day.